Okay, for the next two segments, we're going to be joined by our legal panel, -1. Let's start by introducing the pair. We're joined by Jim Kousouros, criminal defense attorney in Manhattan, sitting on the board of directors, the New York City Criminal Bar Association. He also frequently lectures at New York Law School, the bar associations in Queens and New York City. Mayo Bartlett, attorney at law at the offices of Mayor Bartlett, PLLC, and also former chief of the Bias Crimes Unit at the Westchester County DA's office. And yes, guys, we finally got rid of Doug. I kid. All right, let's start off with a wave of pardons that's come down here. The president giving an early Christmas present to war criminals, corrupt Republican congressmen, figures from the Mueller probe who lied to the government. Trump issuing 15 pardons last night, more expected to come. Of the pardons that he doled out, they include George Papadopoulos, another guy who lied to the feds during the Mueller investigation, and he served a very short prison sentence. Trump also pardoned 4 Blackwater contractors. You may remember these were the folks involved in the massacre at a traffic circle in Iraq where 17 people were killed, all innocent civilians, including 2 small children. The 4 of those military contractors, all former U.S. soldiers who were serving long prison sentences, one of them supposed to be locked up for life. 3 former GOP congressmen convicted of fraud, Duncan Hunter, Chris Collins, Steve Stockman, also getting pardons. And in addition to the 15, the president also commuted the sentences of 5 people, including 4 who were in prison for drug charges. So guys, I know every administration has a questionable pardon here or there, but for folks who follow this, they're saying that this is unprecedented, that all these pardons have something in common, that they're done either out of self-service or personal interest, rewarding friends, or even some form of retribution with these things. You know, and we're not even into January. He didn't even go through, Jimmy. You know, usually you go through Department of Justice to do vetting. Apparently, you know, he just started checking off names here and said, sure.
That's right. And, you know, look, the fact that he's not going through DOJ or asking anybody's opinion, come on, that can't surprise anybody.
It can't, but you know, Mayo, especially those with the Blackwater case, I mean, it's horrific what those guys did, and you know, women and children, and the message it sends, forget about even to our allies around the world here, but you're also putting people in danger that are our representatives on the ground right now in Iraq. I mean, it was one of the ugliest stains since we've been in that country during the war. It sends a horrible message, just like these other congressmen here who clearly were corrupt. You know, there wasn't any nuance at least involved, and no justification that this was righting a wrong.
I think that you're 100% correct. And when you start to look also in terms of the corruption, public corruption is something that in particular should not be pardoned because it sends the message to the general public that there are no rules. And it goes to the very heart of why we actually have rules and regulations that prevent us from having self-dealing, that prevent us from taking advantage of society through our governmental roles.
As I said before, he's just getting started with this, guys. And the question is, will he pardon his inner circle? And it's interesting because Michael Cohen, say whatever you want about the guy, but he does know Trump and Trump's MO. He was asked the question, and this is what he said. Will Trump pardon Rudy Giuliani? Will he pardon Steve Bannon? Will he pardon Don Jr., Eric, Ivanka, Jared? Here's my answer: no. Donald Trump cares for no one or anything except for himself, and that includes his own children. Trump will only do what benefits Trump. He said if Trump pre-pardoned his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, for example, who hasn't been charged with any crime, Kushner could lose his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. And obviously, Jimmy, we've talked at length on this program with you guys about the exposure Trump will face as a private citizen in less than a month. To that end, do you buy what Cohen's saying, that if you pardon some of these same folks, they might, you know, be compelled to testify and testify against them?
I don't know that it ultimately makes a difference, okay? Because if he doesn't pardon them and they have a Fifth Amendment to invoke, if the government or any prosecutorial agency wants their testimony anyway, they can just give immunity, and then they will not have a Fifth Amendment privilege to invoke. The other side of it is, you know, So to the extent that their perception is that he only cares about himself and that's why he didn't pardon them, they could cooperate. So the fact that he doesn't pardon them and thus leaves them with a Fifth Amendment privilege to invoke does not entirely shield him from whatever harm that they could do to him.
Mayo, then the question about himself, and this is an open, unanswered question, whether or not a president can pardon himself. But Cohen was asked, then do you think he'd step down and have Pence pardon him, Pence become president and then pardon Trump? He says no way. That's not his MO. So do you think at the end of the day, guess first here for me, do you think the president self-pardons? And if he does, how at the end of the day will the courts decide whether he can or he can't?
I would tend to think he's not going to self-pardon. I think if he attempted to do so, there's going to be a tremendous amount of pressure on the court to find that he cannot. Again, it's about setting precedent. And if he's able to pardon himself, then essentially what you're telling every future president is that there's no reason not to engage in crime while you're a president, while you're in office. And there's no limit to what you can do, which includes espionage against your own nation. It includes collusion with organized criminals. It includes anything that you choose to do. Going back to President Trump's statement that you could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and not be charged.
I agree. I agree.
All right, guys, stay with me. When we come back, some of the most conservative hosts on Fox, they're now debunking their election fraud claims on their own programs. We're going to show you the Weasley way that they're doing it and also discuss whether or not that ploy might get them to get out of some lawsuits that are coming. Stay with us.